3 spine-chilling true Blackout horror tales. Unexplained terror revealed in sinister darkness. Jessica felt the heaviness of the evening settle around her. She was exhausted, the din of the outside world fading as a storm brewed in the distance. The oppressive heat of summer hung in the air, squeezing the life out of her small suburban home in Phoenix, Arizona. Just when she thought the day couldn't get any worse, the power flickered. The cozy cocoon she'd created for her and her curious 8-year-old son, Ethan, vanished into pitch-black darkness. The comforting hum of electronics silenced itself, leaving creaks and scratches to echo ominously around them, fueling her growing anxiety. "Mom, what's that noise?" Ethan's voice was small, but it sliced through the tension like a knife, awakening a primal dread in her chest. Jessica felt a chill ripple down her spine. It must be the wind, she tried to convince herself. Just her imagination acting up after another grueling shift. But the fear in Ethan's wide, innocent eyes told her that this wasn't just her overactive mind. A sudden buzz from her phone shattered the unsettling stillness. It illuminated the darkness with a message from an unknown number. "You're not alone tonight." Jessica's heart raced, clawing its way into her throat. She squeezed the phone tightly, her fingers trembling. Through the window, shadows danced just beyond the fence, silhouettes of faceless figures that sent her mind spiraling into a terror she couldn't articulate. What was supposed to be a peaceful suburban life morphed into a claustrophobic nightmare. Desperation gripped her, and she made a decision. She needed to reach Mr. Thompson, her neighbor. He was the reliable one, the guy they all respected. She knocked. The unease in her gut twisted deeper as he opened the door just a crack. His face registered concern, but behind those weary eyes lurked something darker. "Oh, Jessica, it's just the storm. Kids have wild imaginations," he chuckled, but it lacked any hint of assurance. Something felt wrong. A dread-based knot twisted tighter in her throat. "Maybe I'll just call the police," she stammered, her voice shaky. But when she did, the officer's indifference evaporated her courage. "Just a power outage, ma'am. You've been watching too many horror movies," he chuckled, sending her straight back into the swirling abyss of fear. As she hurried back home, the deluge of fog crept closer, enveloping her neighborhood. She was acutely aware of the shift. Familiar didn't feel safe anymore. Huddling beside Ethan, she whispered a story of courage to ease their minds, but her gut churned with every word. Just beyond their window lurked shadows, breathing in the darkness as they drifted closer. Was it just her imagination, or was something sinister waiting out there? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, and just like that, the lights flickered back on, momentarily bathing the room in harsh fluorescent light. Jessica exhaled, relief washing over her as Ethan's small hands squeezed hers. But in that split second, they saw a grotesque shadow moving outside, twisted and elongated against the walls. Her heart raced. She had to know. But what if the faces of their trusted neighbors weren't who they seemed? Adrenaline surged as the walls closed around them. She had to decide. Fight or flee. The haunting thought echoed what could possibly protect her and Ethan from the monstrous truths lurking, waiting just outside their door. The lights flickered again, the unfriendly hum of electricity echoing more like a warning. Jessica's breath felt shallow, and she clutched Ethan tighter, his small body pressed against hers. The shadow on the wall twisted once more, the menacing form shifting into something nightmarish. "Mom?" Ethan whispered, fear threading his voice. "Shoo, honey, it's okay." But Jessica didn't believe her own words. The way it moved, slithering like a living thing, made her stomach drop. What was outside? Thinking quickly, she turned to her phone to dial 911 again. But the screen was blank, completely dead. No signal. Panic gripped her heart. No, no. She shook it, hoping some life would return to it, but only silence answered. Suddenly, a knock broke through the tension, loud and authoritative. Jessica jumped, her heart hammering in her chest. Who could it be? She crept to the window, peering through the sheer curtains, but the night was a thick curtain of shadows. The knock came again, softer this time, almost a whisper against the wooden door. Jessica, it's me, a voice called. Mr. Thompson. She recognized that gravelly tone, but there was something different. The authority he usually exuded was replaced by an unsettling edge. Open up. Quick. With her heart racing, she reluctantly unlatched the door, swinging it open just a crack. What's going on? She met his eyes and saw them wide with fear. What's happening? You need to get out of here now. His words tumbled out, desperate. They're coming. Ethan stood behind her, his small fingers clutching her shirt. Who's coming, Mom? Before she could answer, a primal scream echoed through the night, so piercing it made her flinch. It was followed by the sounds of shuffling boots and muffled voices that came from various directions. Fear formed a lump in her throat, choking her resolve. Mr. Thompson's eyes darted nervously, and in an unexpected shift, something fierce sparked in them. It's not safe. Go. I can hold them off. Hold them off. Jessica exclaimed, voicing the shock, the dread that nested in her heart. What do you mean? Just trust me. He snapped, but she hesitated. It didn't add up. She glanced at Ethan, his face pale and scared, mirroring her own dread. Was she really going to let him go out there? Mom? He whimpered. The innocence in his voice broke through the fog of terror. Jessica steeled her resolve, knowing they couldn't stay here, but leaving felt like a death sentence. Determined, she ripped her gaze away from Mr. Thompson. We need to go, Ethan. Come on. They rushed past the threshold, leaving the door ajar. With every step they took into the darkened hallway, the air grew thicker, as if they were wading into treacherous waters. Just outside, the streets felt foreign. Neighborhood houses loomed, shrouded in the eerie fog that swallowed everything in its mist. The terrified murmurs of their neighbors mixed with the angry whispers in the shadows, a dangerous symphony playing around them. Where do we go? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. We run to the car, Jessica replied decisively, eyes scanning their surroundings. The chill in the air gnawed at her skin. Danger lurked at every corner. As they sprinted towards the driveway, a figure stepped out from the enveloping mist, their face obscured. Jessica's heart plummeted. Go back. Get in the house. Her neighbor shouted, a frenzy in his voice, but it didn't sound like a warning. Felt like a command. Before she could react, Mr. Thompson burst into view from behind, struggling against a shadowy form that had materialized from nowhere. Run, he gasped, pleading with her. The blaring alarm of panic surged, shoving her forward. She could hear the footsteps of others closing in from behind. In a moment of terrifying clarity, Jessica and Ethan sprinted towards the car, adrenaline propelling them forward. But as they reached the vehicle, it became unmistakably clear this wasn't just a storm. Something darker awaited within the fog, hungry and ready to collect what was lost. They fumbled with the car door, desperate to escape, but it wouldn't budge. And then came the sinister laughter from the shadows. The night crept closer, a shroud of impending doom closing around them. And just like that, the darkness whispered a new message. You should have never left. Jessica yanked at the car door, panic flooding her veins. The laughter from the shadows deepened, a low, mocking sound that seemed to echo from all directions. Each chuckle felt like a taunt, feeding off her terror. She turned to Ethan, whose wide eyes mirrored her horror. Get down, she shouted, dropping to the pavement and tugging him with her. They huddled low, the cold ground biting through their clothes. Around them, the mist swirled, obscuring anything beyond a few feet. Mom, what is happening? Ethan's quivering voice cut through the mounting dread, a fragile spark of innocence in the escalating chaos. Her heart raced as fear clawed at her throat. I don't know, she gasped, eyes darting toward the looming darkness closing in. The street lamps flickered, and for a moment, their glow illuminated the shapes flitting through the fog. Figures, many of them, moving like predators stalking a wounded prey. Just then, a loud crash shattered the suspense, a neighbor's window breaking somewhere behind them. Jessica's body stiffened. "They're not just coming, they're here," Ethan whimpered softly, pressing his face into her shoulder. "What do we do?" "Stay quiet," she whispered. The laughter grew louder, echoing around them, mingling with the distant sounds of chaos, shouts, screams, footsteps pounding the ground. It was a symphony of terror, as if the very night were alive and evil. She turned her gaze to the car. If they could just get inside, they might find safety or at least a chance. With one last surge of determination, she whispered, "We have to move, Ethan. On 3. Okay. Mom." His voice trembled with fear, but he nodded resolutely. 1, 2, 3. In unison, they sprang toward the car, limbs pumping, hearts racing. Jessica grabbed the handle again. With desperation fueling her, she pulled with all her might. This time, the door sprang open, but not before a shape dark and elongated lunged at them from the mist. Jessica shoved Ethan inside, diving in after him. She slammed the door shut just in time. The shadow collided with the window, a grotesque face pressed against the glass, mouth twisted in a snarl, eyes gleaming with malice. "Go, go," she yelled, fumbling with the keys, hands clammy and shaky. The engine roared to life, breaking the suffocating silence. As she threw the car into gear, a child's piercing scream echoed from the darkness. It cut through her like a knife, a sound of pure anguish that brought tears to her eyes. "Mommy!" Jessica's stomach twisted. She wanted to help, to save whoever was crying out. But there wasn't time. They were being hunted. With a lurch, she slammed on the gas and the tires screeched against the cracked pavement. The car jolted forward, but the laughter didn't dissipate. Instead, it circled around them, undulating through the air, warping into a cacophony. Each laugh seemed to seep into the car like a creeping poison, nestling in her mind. What if they follow us?" Ethan's voice cut through the noise, shaky but brave. "I don't know," she replied, glimpsing behind them. Shapes poured from the fog, darting after them with swift grace. The road twisted and turned, but she had to keep driving. The headlights illuminated brief shadows dancing in the roadside trees, and the sounds of their pursuers grew louder. Those monstrous figures slipped in and out of her vision. Were they real, or manifestations of her crumbling sanity? As they sped away from the neighborhood, the air outside seemed to pulse, thick and alive with malignancy. Then she saw it, a roadblock ahead, barricades hastily assembled. A figure stood in front, arms raised, but it wasn't her neighbor anymore. The shape twisted oddly, movements unnatural. "Jessica!" it called, but the voice was distorted, echoing like it belonged to something else. Her gut twisted tighter. What lay ahead? Would it be safety or another kind of nightmare? As she hurtled toward the barrier, dread pooled in her veins. The world outside skated between chaos and shadow. She had one chance, and suddenly a new voice broke through the whispering darkness, chilling her to the bone. "Stop, or we will end this," Jessica realized with rising horror. There was nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. What had she pulled Ethan into? What really waited in the suffocating fog? And with that terrifying thought ringing in her ears, they charged straight into the heart of the unknown. The world around them blurred. Jessica gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The roadblock loomed closer, but her mind raced faster than the car. "We have to find a way through," she shouted, her voice hoarse from fear as she swerved, barely missing the figure in the road. "Mom, watch out!" Ethan shrieked. In a frantic twist, Jessica turned the wheel. The tires shrieked as they skidded, sending a spray of gravel flying. The headlights caught a fleeting glimpse of the figure, eyes like black holes, swallowing all light. It seemed to bend and stretch, a grotesque reminder of what she feared. "Hold on," she shouted, tearing off the road and into a narrow alley. The car cramped between the high, crumbling walls, the stench of damp concrete invading their senses. Ethan stared wide-eyed, terror shimmering in his gaze. "What are they?" he whispered, leaning closer, shrinking into his seat. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." Her voice quaked, uncertainty creeping in. They jolted forward, the engine roaring in defiance. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted, of someone or something hot on their trail. She glanced in the rearview mirror, just catching sight of dark forms slinking after them, vapor-like tendrils stretching, reaching. The laughter heightened, almost musical, echoing against the brick walls surrounding them. A shiver clawed at her spine. It sounded familiar, as if she had heard it in happier times around a campfire, under glowing stars. But here it was twisted, sinister. Her heart raced, threatening to leap out of her chest. They emerged from the alley onto a deserted street. A heartbeat was the only sound, punctuated by the distant shattering of glass and muted cries. Every shadow felt alive and hungry, waiting to pounce. "Where do we go?" Ethan's voice was small, fractured. "The bridge. We'll head for the bridge," she decided, swinging into a side street, knowing the reinforced structure might offer some solace. But as they raced, Jessica felt a tremor of doubt. Would there be safety on the other side? The laughter chased them, swirling like an unholy wind. It floated closer, weaving into her thoughts, gnawing on her sanity. Then she spotted another car abandoned by the roadside. The doors swung wide open. "We can't stop. We can't," she screamed, but something propelled her to glance. The vehicle's interior sat empty, the seats smeared with dark stains. "Mom, it looks bad," Ethan whimpered, his eyes filled with something close to despair. "No," she snapped, urging the car faster. Diverting her glance back to the road, a sliver of darkness flickered at the corner of her vision, racing towards them. "Look out!" Ethan shouted. She diverted her gaze just as a figure leapt into the street, limbs impossibly long, unnatural in the illumination of their headlights. The car swerved violently. Jessica fought for control, panic mounting. Did they crash? Did they hit something? Time stretched, fear dragging them down. Collisions of metal, screams, laughter, everything blurred into chaos. In an instant, the world exploded in pain and light, the sensation wrenching her stomach. And then silence. Ethan's voice broke through the haze, pleading, "Mom?" A rush of adrenaline shot through her veins. Jessica blinked, the scene shifting like a veil lifting. The car lay awkwardly on the side, steam rising from the hood. The barren street around them was eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of the dark creatures that chased them. "Are they gone?" she whispered, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. But as they struggled to pull themselves together, an unsettling sound slithered through the air, a soft, guttural giggle, rising from somewhere beyond the car. Darkness surged around them once again, wrapping tighter, and her blood ran cold. "Mom," Ethan's voice quivered, filled with dread. Jessica fumbled for the door, desperation clawing at her. "We need to move." But as she opened it, the laughter crescendoed into a furious symphony of chaos. Figures emerged from the shadows, no longer lurking, now revealing themselves with twisted grins. What she thought had vanished reemerged with fierceness. They were not fleeing anymore. They were cornered. And with those figures closing in, she realized it was too late. Would she and Ethan face the dark, or become part of it? The fog thickened, and Jessica felt the grip of doom tightening around their necks. A blaring siren sliced through the silence, sending a surge of adrenaline through Jessica. Her heart pounded against her chest like a trapped animal. She turned to Ethan, who clung to his seat, eyes wide with fear. "Stay close," she hissed, gripping the doorframe tight as she opened it. The laughter taunted them, rising and falling like a cruel wave. Jessica darted into the street, glancing left and right. The world felt alive with malice, shadows pulsing, lurking with unseen intent. "Mom!" Ethan's voice sliced through the tension, filled with a raw edge of panic that sent her heart racing. She turned, catching sight of the figures. Foul beings, thin as bone, Their long fingers twisted around themselves in an eerie dance. They moved with a fluidity that defied nature, gliding closer, their eyes black pits of hunger. "Run!" she shouted, lunging forward. Ethan followed, slipping out of the car just as one of the figures lunged at them. Jessica felt a rush of air as it missed, its cold breath grazing her cheek, the scent of decay making her stomach churn. She sprinted, the asphalt rough against her soles, desperate to reach the bridge in the distance. "Mom, wait!" Ethan's footfalls faded behind her. She turned, panic swelling. "Ethan, keep up." The figures moved like shadows, a dance of horror, closing the distance with rapid precision. She felt a shiver crawl down her spine, the instinct to flee overwhelming all rational thought. But when she glanced back, Ethan was stumbling, tripping over the uneven ground. "Don't stop!" she screamed, pushing through the tightening grip of dread. His breath came in raspy gulps. I can't." The laughter intensified, wrapping them in a blanket of despair. Jessica reached for him, her hands shaking as she felt the weight of darkness closing in. "Ethan, get up." In an instant, the figures lunged, their mouths stretching impossibly wide into tortured smiles. Jessica felt the wind shift, the air thickening with malice. Without thinking, she threw herself at Ethan, yanking him upright. "Come on." The bridge loomed closer. A glimmer of hope flickered. If they could just reach it, but as they ran, the ground shook, splintering under their feet. The bridge grew dimmer, smothered in gray mist that pulled at their legs like gnarled hands. "What's happening?" Ethan cried, stumbling again. "I don't know." She felt her resolve slipping, frustration boiling over. Dark tendrils of smoke unfurled around them, entwining their ankles. Jessica clawed at the air, tearing at the invisible bind. "Move, Ethan. They're coming." He nodded, eyes wide, and together they surged forward, fighting against the weight of despair. Each step felt like a battle, the laughter echoing, merging with their heavy breaths. Finally, they reached the bridge, a skeletal structure looming above the abyss. The air was cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of panic still coursing through her veins. "We made it," Ethan gasped, relief flickering in his eyes. But still, the laughter followed, echoing louder now, vibrating through the steel and stone. The figures hadn't stopped darkness, didn't simply vanish. As they took a step onto the bridge, the ground trembled beneath them. The planks creaked ominously, threatening to splinter. "What if it gives in?" Ethan's voice trembled with dread. "Keep moving. We can't let them catch us." The shadows grew restless around the edges of the bridge. As they stepped deeper, their ample laughter morphed into a horrid chorus, each note dripping with malice. It was a melody of despair, a serenade for the doomed. Ethan clutched her arm tighter, his grip digging into her skin, radiating the urgency of their situation. Just as they reached the midpoint, the ground beneath them buckled, releasing a chorus of cracking wood. "No!" Jessica screamed, feeling the surface shift like quicksand. A flicker of black surged towards them, grotesque smiles growing. "Mom! Help!" Before she could grasp Ethan's arm, the bridge splintered, his body falling into the abyss below. "Ethan!" She screamed, the world around her collapsing as the shadows surged, darkness ready to swallow her whole. And as she teetered on the edge, heart pounding, a chilling thought struck her. What if she had never truly escaped? The darkness, once a distant threat, was now a reality closing in, and she felt its cold tendrils wrapping around her, squeezing tighter. Jessica teetered, the abyss yawning before her. Panic exploded within her chest, clawing for escape, but uncertainty held her tight. She could almost hear Ethan's voice, crying out from somewhere deep below, echoing in the vast emptiness. "Mom!" With a jolt, she stumbled back, regaining her balance just as the shadows rushed toward her, teeth bared in wicked delight. The figures coiled around the bridge as supports like vines of hate, pulling taut, threatening to tip the structure into the void. Screams choked her throat. "Ethan!" Desperation pinned her to the ground, but she had to move. She turned on her heel, adrenaline pumping, unwilling to succumb to the darkness wrapping around her. Think! Think! She whispered frantically, scanning the bridge. Everything felt like a nightmare, expanding shadows, mocking laughter vibrating through the planks. The air turned dense and cold, swallowing her panicked breath. She focused. There must be a way to fight back. The edges of her vision blurred, and a pulsing throb echoed in her ears as the darkness shifted and roiled. Her eyes caught the outline of a figure above the gloom, a bridge support, wide enough to climb. A glimmer of a plan emerged. Spurred by a flicker of hope, she surged toward it, gripping the edges for leverage. Her heart raced as she clawed her way up, muscles straining against the weight of despair pulling her back down. As she hoisted herself higher, the laughter morphed into a cacophony of whispers, each voice dripping with malice. She can't escape, she needs him, no, she shouted, launching herself upward. The laughter shifted into a sinister melody that throbbed in time with her pounding heart, twisting her thoughts. She fought to block it out, but the whispers felt like hands reaching for her mind, squeezing tighter still. She pulled herself onto the wooden beam, balancing precariously. Her mind raced. Could she look down? What would she see? But fear paralyzed her. Ethan, she muttered, letting that thought absorb her. She couldn't think of losing him. But without him beside her, paranoia squeezed at her from the edges of sanity. The bridge began to sway. Splinters jabbed painfully against her palms. Below, shadows writhed and writhed, beckoning her to join them. Get up, fight, she shouted into the shadows, summoning that flicker of survival. It burned within her like a flickering candle, but the laughter only intensified, responding to her defiance. It echoed back, louder and more chaotic, drowning her in questions. How much would you sacrifice? To save him? The voices sounded disembodied, swirling around her like a storm. What would you trade? I don't know, she yelled. Anything. With a renewed sense of urgency, she pushed forward. Eyes fixed on the far end of the bridge, she measured each step, fighting against the darkness that crept along the planks below her. Then, without warning, the shadows lunged up at her, an amalgam of despair taking form, hands grasping for her. She darted to the side, narrowly evading their grasp, but her foot caught on a loose board. She stumbled, nearly losing her balance. As she teetered, the world spun. At that moment, she felt the cold grip of a figure wrap around her ankle. I'm here, Mom. Help me. Ethan's voice was clear and desperate, cutting through the fog of terror. Ethan! She bellowed, her heart splitting in two. She fought to regain her footing. She had to break free, and then silence fell. The shadows stilled. Time itself felt suspended. What just happened? Jessica whispered, breath shallow. The quiet echoed like a scream in her ears, and her heart pounded louder than all the laughter combined. But before she could ponder her next move, a new sound began to swarm around her, a soft, unsettling rustle, like whispers gathering in the dark. The bridge creaked ominously, the shadows stirred again, and she knew the darkness was not done with her yet. What was waiting in that silence? Her instincts screamed at her to run, but another part crept in, the dread of what lay ahead, of what she might have to face alone. And from the depths of the shadows, a new figure emerged, looming larger and more monstrous than before. Jessica's heart raced at the realization. They weren't just hunting her. They had a new target. Ethan. She screamed in terror as the darkness shifted toward where he had fallen. Jessica's scream ricocheted off the bridge walls, rattling her nerves as she clung to the beam for dear life. The shadowy figure slithered closer, its shape twisting and morphing, a grotesque parody of a human form. It emerged from the depths, moving with a fluidity that defied nature. The mere sight froze her blood. Ethan! She called out again, panic surging through her veins. The abyss below chuckled softly, promising terror if she dared to look down. The figure grew more defined, its hollow eyes glinting like shards of glass. She needs him. It crooned, its voice dripping with cold malice. Each word sent needles of ice down Jessica's spine, twisting her insides into knots of dread. The darkness began to pulse as if breathing. It wanted her to collapse, to give in. But she couldn't lose him. Not now. She had to reach him, had to confront whatever monster stood between them. With a deep breath, she steadied herself and took a step along the beam, forcing her frozen limbs to obey. The shadows writhed beneath her, whispering incoherent curses, trying to sway her resolve. "You are too late," they hissed in guttural tones. "He is ours now." "No," she yelled, the word tearing from her throat, raw and desperate. "Yes, my son." As if responding to her assertion, the monstrosity lunged, hands reaching. Jessica flinched, instinctively swinging her weight back, barely regaining her balance. The shadows erupted beneath her, dozens of clamoring arms grasping for her now, pulling at her clothes, trying to yank her into their cold embrace. Adrenaline shot through her, a desperate surge of survival that drowned out the cacophony of whispers. "I won't give up," she shouted into the void, finding a flicker of strength deep within. "Ethan needs me." She gathered herself and sprinted forward, each step feeling heavier, every movement plagued by the ceaseless darkness clawing at her. The figure above moved closer, its grotesque smile widening, displaying jagged teeth that dripped with some dark liquid, like ichor waiting to devour her whole. "Your sacrifice will bring him back," it cooed, voice smooth yet harsh. "What would you relinquish in exchange? Your very soul?" Jessica felt an ice-cold grip on her heart. It was true, she would do anything. She would cross the line of despair itself, rather than lose Ethan. But at what cost? The shadows around her pulsed, a wave of darkness swelling and crashing, trying to drown out her thoughts, her purpose. She had to keep one thing in focus: Ethan. "Fight! You can do this!" she shouted, though the sound felt weak against the overwhelming laughter of the abyss. She leaped onto an adjoining beam, the wood groaning beneath her weight, and propelled herself. A flash of hope ignited within her. Maybe there was a way to break through the darkness. Maybe suddenly, a deafening crack echoed. The bridge shuddered beneath her. Jessica glanced back. The supporting beams splintered, dark figures roaring as they pulled with inhuman strength. The bridge was failing. It would soon collapse. "Ethan," she cried out for the last time, the name choked out through panic and determination. In that moment, she leaped again, feeling the air rush past her as she left the unstable beam behind. She soared, propelled by adrenaline and despair. Would she land safely? Would there be any hope on the other side? As she reached out to grab for something, anything, a sharp pain pierced her side. She had caught a glimpse of Ethan below, his face pale and terrified, reviewing the horror of what loomed above him. Then chaos erupted. With a shattering sound, the darkness surged up like a tide, wrapping around her leg. The shadowy figure above cackled, a wretched sound that echoed through her mind, drowning out her thoughts. Jessica's vision blurred as she fell, heart racing, the deep chasm beneath yawning wide. The darkness promised oblivion. Would she hold on to her son, or would she plunge headlong into the unknown? As her grip slipped, she felt herself dragged down into that never-ending night, where uncertainty and terror converged. What awaited them at the bottom? Would anyone escape the nightmare? Before the darkness swallowed her whole, one final scream shattered the silence, piercing the night. "Mom!" And then silence. Jessica plunged into the unforgiving darkness, the abyss swallowing her whole. The world blurred around her, sounds muffled as if wrapped in a heavy blanket. For a moment, she felt weightless, detached from reality. Then the ground surged up to meet her, and she hit hard, gasping for breath. Pain shot through her body, anchoring her to the moment. As she blinked against the blackness, shapes began to emerge, jagged and twisted. The air was cold, filled with a dampness that seemed to creep into her bones. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice echoing into the maw of nothingness, swallowed quickly by the shadows. Panic surged within her again. As she forced herself up, every movement a reminder of the torment she faced. The darkness was not just around her. It burrowed into her mind, filling it with sickening visions of what might have happened to her son. "Stay strong. He needs you," she whispered to herself, knowing she had to find him. As Jessica stumbled forward, she listened intently, her heart pounding in her chest. Stillness hung heavy, each breath echoing like a distant drum. Then, a faint sound, a whimper. "Ethan. Mom!" The cry was small and frightened, tearing through the shadows like a knife. Jessica rushed toward the sound, her heart a desperate metronome, guiding her. "Ethan!" She yelled again, urgency spilling from her lips. The air shifted, the shadows thickening in response. They recoiled slightly, as if shifting away from her growing resolve. But then silence returned, strangling her hope. The closer she got, the louder the whispers grew around her. "Leave him," they hissed, filling her ears with dread. "He is ours." Jessica's chest tightened. She wouldn't listen. She couldn't. "Get away from him," she screamed, clenching her fists, drawing on every ounce of strength. Suddenly, a flash of light pierced through the oppressive darkness, illuminating long, strange shapes around her. Faces twisted in agony and rage, eyes wide with terror, reaching out as if to drag her down with them. The ground quaked beneath her, shards of broken reality threatening to pull her under. "Ethan, I'm coming." Her words cut through the fray as she pressed on, fear fueling her every step. As she navigated the labyrinth of shadows, she saw shadows flicker at the edges, familiar silhouettes blending into the dark. They danced and writhed, calling out in voices that sent chills down her spine. "Give up, join us," Jessica gritted her teeth. There was a glimmer in the distance, a faint warmth. She could feel it pulling her, could almost see a figure. "Ethan." "Mom!" Panic laced his voice, thin and shaky. She pushed forth, the darkness clawing at her, wrapping around her legs like cold steel. She fought against it, urging her body forward. With each step, images tormented her. Ethan alone in despair, encased in shadows, fading away. A scream caught in her throat as she extended her hand toward the light. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice strained as she battled the rising tide. And then it hit her, a chilling realization. The shadows were not mere obstacles. They were memories, specters of her fears and regrets. Each step was a piece of her life laid bare, unearthing moments she had buried deep. If she succumbed to the darkness, she would lose him forever. "Stop!" she shouted, voice stronger, resonating through her uncertainty. "You can't have him." The shadows recoiled, hissing in fury, the faces contorting in anguish as they rushed toward her with renewed vigor. For an instant, she faltered, dread crawling up her spine. A wall of black horror threatened to overwhelm her, suffocating her will. But she remembered Ethan, his smile, his laughter. That spark within her reignited. Harnessing every ounce of defiance, she charged toward the faint light. But just as she reached it, the ground beneath her fractured, splintering apart. The darkness erupted, churning violently. She clutched her head, desperate. No. The ground gave way, and a scream erupted from her lips, echoing in the crushing dark. Would the abyss claim them both, or could she defy it? The light flickered, a desperate beacon, then it vanished. All around was chaos, shadows swirling fiercely as they howled in rage. She was alone, and yet somehow not alone. Was Ethan still there? As the last spark of hope flickered away, shadows enveloped her. Whispering promises of despair swirled around her head. In the depths of darkness, a single question hung like a ghost. Would she find him, or would she be lost forever? Jessica felt herself plunge deeper into the abyss, the cold darkness thickening around her. The air felt alive, pulling at her limbs as dread settled in her stomach. It was the weight of the unknown, the gnawing realization that she was adrift in a world distorted by fear. "Ethan." Her voice echoed, wavering with uncertainty. She strained to hear, to cling to that sliver of hope. Silence answered, wrapping itself around her like a suffocating blanket. With every shaky breath, she took stock of her surroundings. The terrain beneath her feet was uneven, littered with sharp stones that bit into her flesh. Each step was cautious, filled with the dread of what lay in the shadows. Her pulse quickened. Was it real? Were the darkness and the whispers mere figments of her mind? Or was there something truly monstrous lurking just out of sight? The faintest sound reached her, another whimper, softer this time. It churned her insides. "Ethan, where are you?" She pressed forward again, knowing she had to reach him. As she stumbled along, the whispers intensified. "Leave this place, surrender," they slithered into her mind, wavering like a flickering candle, and doubt began to seep in. What if she was not meant to save him? What if it was already too late? "Shut up. You're wrong," she yelled, desperation fueling her. Each word felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. The darkness recoiled slightly, but the murmurs returned, more menacing, weaving tales of despair through the wreckage of her sanity. "ELL, forget you, you're too late." "No," she shouted, battling against the encroaching despair. "I want to listen." But the shadows around her twisted, figures emerging with faces twisted in sorrow, mouths filled with silent screams. They loomed closer, as if hungry for her anguish. Each figure mirrored a part of her, the guilt, the regrets, the nagging belief that she had failed him somehow. A pang of sorrow struck. What if they were right? What if she had lost Ethan before she even entered this darkness? The thought clawed at her, threatening to pull her down into the maw of hopelessness. "Mom!" The soft voice shattered her bleak thoughts. "Ethan!" Jessica clawed forward, the darkness clawing back, digging sharp fingers into her skin, rooting her in place. "Why are you looking for me?" The voice echoed back, now with a chilling twist, almost mocking. "I'm fine here with them." "No." Panic seized her. "Don't say that." Then the ground began to tremble, spewing forth shadows that writhed and twisted like dying things. The once distant glimmer of light drowned in the chaos. Jessica fell hard, her vision swimming. The ground cracked like ice under her, revealing a bottomless chasm below, an infinite pit of swirling shadows. "Ethan!" She screamed again, her voice cracking, desperation clawing at her throat. "Come and join us." The shadows hissed, their chill wrapping around her like a cold hand clasping her neck. Jessica's heart raced as they edged closer, beckoning her to surrender. But she saw something beyond them, a flicker of valor, a glint of hope that could lead her back. She focused, feeling every ounce of fear banked within her. "Stay away from him," she cried, the words fierce and raw. Suddenly, an explosion of light burst forth, blinding her, the shadows retreating like ink spilling off a page. Some dark shapes began to dissolve, shaking themselves free of her grasp. Hope flared bright within her chest. Had she found him? Then, the world shifted again, the light sparking a tremor beneath her. She felt a withdrawal, as if the ground beneath her was pulling away, trying to reclaim its territory. "Ethan!" She screamed one last time, as everything around her faded, sucked into an impossible void, leaving only silence, suffocating silence. Was this the end, or merely the beginning of something darker? As she stood at the precipice of despair, the shadows began to coalesce once more, forming a shape that filled her with dread. You cannot escape what awaited her when the darkness summoned her back. Would she find her son, or would she be engulfed by the very terrors she fought against? The abyss laughed, a deep, throaty sound echoing through the darkness, as she felt herself teetering on the edge of fate. "Ethan!" The question loomed, was she running toward salvation or deeper into damnation? Jessica teetered on the cusp of oblivion, the swirling shadows beckoning her to surrender to the darkness. Yet a familiar voice stirred deep within her heart. "Ethan!" She cried again, her voice breaking the suffocating silence, a beacon of hope anchoring her to reality. For a moment, silence reigned, but then she felt something shift in the air, the weight of despair loosening its grip ever so slightly. "Mom!" The voice came again, fragile but resolute, tinged with fear and longing. In that instant, fire ignited in Jessica's chest. She would not be swallowed whole. The realization surged within her. This darkness was not all-powerful. "You're not alone, Ethan," she shouted defiantly, pushing through the oppressive air that sought to stifle her courage. "I'm coming for you. We will fight this together." The shadows recoiled at her declaration, vibrating with a furious energy, and it became a little easier to move. She pushed through, her feet pounding into the cold, twisted ground. Faces swirled around her in the dark, twisted, anguished specters of her regrets, but she focused on the sound of his voice guiding her. "I'm here," she shouted again. "Just tell me where you are. Follow the light." His voice echoed back, clearer this time, filled with a thread of hope. With legs pumping under her, Jessica charged forward, guided by the faint, ethereal glow cutting through the darkness. It flickered before her, illuminating a path lined with remnants of her life, flashes of laughter, moments of love, the warmth of a sun-soaked day filled with magic and life. But the shadows surged, scrambling to block her way. "You can't have him," she roared, embodying every ounce of fighting spirit she possessed. "Not now, not ever." As she pressed on, the shadows screamed, twisting into forms of agony, clawing at her. She swatted them away like pesky flies, the urgency of her son's cry propelling her beyond fear. "Ethan, I'm coming." Just as despair threatened to pull her back, she broke through, finding herself in a dim clearing lit only by a shaft of light shining from above. And there, her son stood, trapped under tendrils of shadows, fear etched into his features. "Mom!" Ethan's eyes widened, filled with a mix of relief and terror. The sight of him anchored her. She dashed forward, arms outstretched. "Hold on, sweetheart. I'm right here." But as she reached him, the shadows enveloped, wrapping around both of them, battling her resolve. "No, you can't have us," she screamed, hoisting Ethan into her arms. Suddenly, the shadows screamed back, a cacophony of lost souls raging against her. "You can never take him from us." But in that moment, a surge of light pulsed through them, shattering the darkness hold, the warmth cocooning them. Ethan's tiny fingers wrapped around her neck, the bond of love flickering like a flame igniting her soul. "We just need to believe, Mom." His voice echoed with courage, ripping through the shadows. With renewed purpose, she gripped him tighter and shouted, "Let go of us. We are love, and you will not take us." The shadows writhed, shrieking in despair as the light overhead dimmed. She could see the exit shimmering, a pathway outlined by luminescence that contrasted with the abyss around them. With one final push, she took a step forward, pulling Ethan along with her as the light expanded, swallowing the darkness whole. Their world shattered in a burst of brilliant light, releasing a wave of energy that quashed the shadows. And then silence. Jessica blinked, finding herself sitting on the grass outside her home. Daylight streamed around her, warming the chill from her bones. The heavy air of night had lifted, leaving only chirping birds and the faint laughter of children echoing in the distance. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was small, yet filled with sweetness and innocence as he sat beside her, his face glowing with relief rather than fear. Jessica pulled him close, cradling him against her in the soft embrace of reality. "I'm here. It's over," she whispered, tears running freely down her cheeks. The ordeal had tightened her chest, but now a profound sense of peace washed over her. "Did we really escape?" he asked, still clinging to her as if worried the shadows could return. "Yes, we did." She held him tighter, knowing they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. "No matter what comes, we will face it together." Ethan smiled, and for the first time since that ominous storm began, her heart felt full. The horrors, the unseen terrors that tried to tear them apart, could not touch them anymore. They stood, hand in hand, their spirits lightened. Shadows loomed somewhere distant, but they were just shadows now, mere memories that could no longer ensnare either of them. "Let us go inside," Jessica said, each word ringing bright with relief and hope. "We have stories to tell." As they walked under the warm sunshine, the weight of fear that had threatened to consume them melted away. Their bond, forged under the fiercest trials of darkness, now reflected the eternal light of love that would guide them through anything the world dared to throw their way. And as they stepped through the door together, Jessica knew Whatever shadows came in the future, they would always find the light together. Now that you've experienced this chilling tale, don't let it end here. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more heart-pounding stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover our exclusive content. And please, flood the comments section with your reactions. What did you think of the ending? Did it get you? We want to hear all your theories and opinions. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Let them join in on the thrill. Your support means everything,